7 stories. The first 5 I'll share with you shortly. The 6th requires that you connect the dots between the first 5. And the 7th we could tell together if we help each other in the future. 1. Mr. Raisbeck. At Huntsville High School for many years, Mr. Raisbeck was a legendary English teacher who taught us how to write and think and be authentic. 2 things I remember specifically. 1 was be specific, and the 2nd was show, don't tell. Your audience has to form the image of your world in their minds, and all you can really do is inspire them to do so. 2, breathe. I don't know when my life began. Maybe it was with the Big Bang. Maybe it was with my first heartbeat. Maybe my first breath. Maybe before that moment I was mom, or world, or death. I don't remember what it felt like in that time before, when I was my ancestors and yours. When I was 4, my dad had this old 1960s metallic stereo with all kinds of knobs and buttons, and it was a spaceship that I would fly around the universe while I listened to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon on headphones. Dark Side starts kind of like my life did, with a heartbeat. And breathe. Breathe in the air. Don't be afraid to care. But we are afraid to care. Because it's a scary world out there if you make yourself a bear, if you're that apple who dares to be different. Will others care? Will they meet your gaze with theirs or with predatory stares? Will they tease you? Be unfair? Pull your hair? Getting bullied isn't rare. They might even curse at you, spit at you, cut your neck and suck your blood, put thorns in your stomach, put a gun to your face and threaten to end your life, because that's what happened when Marina Abramovic put herself out there. 1974, Rhythm 0. For 6 hours, she subjected her subject, made herself an object who would not object if anyone else subjected her to anything. What would the people do? It started slow. Then as they removed her clothes, she watched the violence grow until her tears flowed and her blood flowed, and then it was time to go. 6 hours later, she broke out of her passivity and reclaimed her subjectivity, and the people ran away, unable to face her now that she was a person again. Like, what if I forget and go silent? How long before you get violent? Before this man becomes an island, not welcome in girl or guyland? And what if I'm just nervous or shy, man? Would you still be a friend and say, hi, man? What if I break down and cry, man? Will you laugh at me if I try and fail? A few decades later, Marina Abramovic did The Artist is Present at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. They thought she was nuts, because it was going to be just her sitting in a room on a chair with a table and another chair across from her. And people would wait in line to sit in the chair and look at her. How many busy New Yorkers are going to do that? But they did. They came in droves, and they cried. After 3 months of watching people's eyes fill with tears, Marina Abramovic said, "They have nowhere to escape except in themselves. And that makes a difference. There was so much pain and loneliness. There's so much incredible things when you look in somebody else's eyes, because in the gaze with that total stranger, you never even say one word. Everything happened. And I understood when I stood up from that chair after 3 months, I'm not the same anymore." We cover ourselves with armor and humor and anger and apathetic resignation and hyper-intellectualization because we're afraid. We don't know how to let go. and connect, and we need to. Acceptance is oxygen to the candle flame that is our soul. Three, when the Fire Nation attacks. So that, as you know, comes from the show Avatar, which is a wonderful show. Not from the movie. As any fan knows, there is no movie in Ba Sing Se. My grandparents in World War II lived through Nazi-occupied Holland. My grandfather was in prison a couple of times and was part of a rebellion, escaped, spent several months scavenging, starving, hiding, lived in a haystack for something like a year while the soldiers searched for him and questioned his family. My grandma was at home with a toddler living in one room of her house while 6 soldiers lived in the rest of the house, and she was their servant. One time in my childhood, she told me her story of being tortured. They wanted to find out where my grandfather was hiding. I think she wanted to make sure that the details weren't forgotten, but she also never wanted to speak about them again. She didn't tell them where he was. So he survived. Later, towards the end of the war, my father was born. The stories of our families show us how lucky we are to be here, and how society is a thin veneer. If you hit it hard enough, it cracks and splits apart. Now, we live in an age of black swans, where technology has decentralized power and brought it down to the level of the individual so that practically any individual can crack the veneer of society. Sometimes this is for good. Think of what some Florida students have been able to accomplish in the last few weeks, more than the adult world was able to do in the last few decades. But on the other hand, think of how a single unhinged person with an assault rifle can destroy dozens of families in a minute. One person with a weaponized drone and face recognition technology can assassinate anybody, from what Roger Waters calls the bravery of being out of range. Imagine one person or a small group, perhaps, with a few $1 million, enough to buy a fleet of weaponized drones with face recognition technology. You could destroy any government in a day, and it's only a matter of time before this happens. Now, add to this picture climate change, ocean acidification, biodiversity collapse, drought, food scarcity, mass migration, prejudice, war. The doomsday clock is set now at 2 minutes to midnight. That means our time is running out. And so much of life is dying out. So many species crying out, and talking is not working. So what, do we try and shout? But who wants to listen to that? So what if we sing? When will our global fate compel us all to state our truths against the state, regardless of the hate of those who dictate, crimes legislate because they can't relate or remunerate those they desecrate in order to create a hegemony that circumnavigates, it circumnavigates, it circumnavigates. If a species dies in the forest and there's nobody around to hear it, it still dies. The world is filled with cries, but only the silent can be wise, and silence hurts more than lies, so we refuse to open our eyes to this global ecocide. To black men incarcerated from children and wives, indigenous voices silenced by lies, Guantanamo's innocents hidden inside, 1 billion Muslims dehumanized, Indian farmers committing suicide, Native youth committing suicide, transgendered people committing suicide, sex trade workers committing suicide, famous singers committing suicide, depressed white dudes committing suicide, Hollywood celebrities committing suicide, Robin Williams, Patch Adams, the genie from Aladdin, Mork for Mork, Nanu, Nanu. Good morning, Vietnam! Oh, Captain, my captain, why is humanity committing suicide? Well, the modern world was built on genocide. So, I'm sorry for this, but imagine that someone was butchering your child. Would you sit back for a while, watch some TV, smile? No, you would go 1,000 extra miles to protect your child. So what about 1 million children? And what about 1 billion? And another billion, 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 and the last billion, and no more children. 4. Scaffolding. Construction workers and teachers both know the importance of scaffolding. When I drum, I don't really know how to drum, but I like to mess around with it because it's fun. So I scaffold. I start with something simple, like a heartbeat, like Dark Side of the Moon. And then I complexify it. Five, 2 teachers. Interestingly, both of them have the same name as my mother, and they influenced me quite a bit. The first one, Sue Barker, Ms. B. She's a being perhaps made of light, like a crystal gem, I'm not sure. Anything seems possible with her. I remember mind benders and divergent thinking exercises, and role play, and guided meditation. But what I remember most of all from her class was that I had a lifelong friend, and that it's okay to think differently. I remember when I was 12, I was the imaginary CEO of a company, and I wanted to hire the apparently least suitable candidate for the job, the person with a criminal record, but a thinking style that I believed in. She wrote me a letter afterwards and said she really liked how I was not afraid to take risks and to believe in people even when others had given up on them. And I've never forgotten that. The second, Susan Schulman, teaches elementary school. She has a disproportionate number of kids in her classes from very difficult backgrounds, such as immigrating from countries at war. What she does is miraculous. Her kids call her class Happy Land. If any of them act out and have behavioral issues, when they're finished, the rest of the class welcomes them back like a family. And if they feel ashamed of themselves and need some space or need to sit under a table for a while, she lets them without trying to fix their problematic behavior. People are often asking her to teach others what her techniques are. And she doesn't know how in some ways because they're not techniques. She loves them. She said to me the other day, teaching kids to self-regulate starts with giving them the love and space they need to feel secure. This means everyone's feelings are welcome. Bad feelings aren't bad. They're something everyone needs to help each other figure out how to deal with. So the way forward in a destabilizing world where the individual can be a weapon of mass destruction is connection. It's dialogue. It's trust. It's vulnerability. It's sharing joy and remembering how to play again. It's humor. It's love. The fact that we've never been able to evolve the human consciousness to what we imagine it is capable of doesn't mean that we can't. It means that we just haven't yet. But we have a unique opportunity to do so this century while everything falls apart. My favorite joke, which my buddy Mike used to say all the time when we were kids, is a horse walks into a bar and the bartender says, "Hey, what's with the long face?" This is how we scaffold becoming members of the same tribe. Thank you.